So, today I want to talk about Donald Trump's upcoming impeachment trial and the Republican Party's position on said trial. Now, the Republican Senate has kind of had this duality where it's been trying to simultaneously get Trump impeached and removed from power, while at the same time being kind of fearful for some reason of doing so and taking any responsibility involved in it. Like, there's been a lot of push for them to move it away from the Senate to be responsible for that position. And in general, across the board, I think that this speaks to a responsibility problem in the Republican Party that we've known has existed for a long time. The Republicans do not want to be responsible for anything that has gone wrong. And so I want to talk about some of the different perspectives that are involved that I think include actual full blown Trump support still up to and including this moment in time, the fear of losing any sort of voter base from Trump supporters, and more importantly than all of that combined is fear of being found to be responsible for what happened on January 6th. So, with that said, let's take a look at some of the things going on within the Republican Party right now. Well, first and foremost, you have a situation in Ohio where lawmakers from the Republican Party are calling for June 14th to become President Donald J. Trump Day. The members of the House, or the two Ohio representatives rather, are looking to declare June 14th as President Donald J. Trump Day. On Friday, Republican Representatives John Cross and Reggie Stoltzfus emailed their House colleagues asking for co-sponsors for their upcoming bill to celebrate one of the greatest presidents in American history. The Columbus Dispatch reports. So if there is any idea that the Republican Party and Trumpism are not still merged in some way, there are still a good amount of Republicans that are willing to take the mantle of Trump because it means votes and it means support. And a lot of people in this country do still support Trump, even if it's not an overwhelming majority, to maybe keep him in power or anything of that sort. So that is something very much to consider when talking about these issues. Now, they selected June 14th because it's Trump's birthday, but it's also Flag Day, which commemorates the adoption of the flag of the United States on June 14th of 1777. Now, the Democrat response to this was, I don't like the idea of changing an existing federal holiday that honors the flag, and I think that's disrespectful. That is such a weak response. That is an absolutely terrible response across the board to what is actually happening here. Because the fact is that no state has actually put a official holiday for any living president. The only holiday that's existed for a living president was for Obama, and it was an unofficial holiday in the state of Illinois for August 4th. And generally speaking, there's a bad precedent around, giving a holiday to somebody who's alive because that just helps further their position as a demagogue, and it can lead to tyrants. That's, exactly the reason why you don't do something like that. And of course, Donald Trump would love this situation to transpire the way that it did and to continue to get recognition. After all, this is the same time period. Of course, while he is under the potential for being impeached, this has been, put forward as a bill, but he also set up the office of the former president in Florida, where basically, he's going to advance the interest of the United States. This is pure demagoguery. This is the absolute epitome of a person who cannot handle that the spotlight has been taken away from him and wants to continue to put himself out there. And so apparently the office will carry on the agenda of the Trump administration through advocacy, organizing, and public activism. And as we've seen, Trump's public activism tends to lead to a lot of potential violence, so maybe he shouldn't be allowed to do something like this, and especially when he's being tried for his public advocacy positions, potentially causing harm in the Capitol. This is another major issue. So the fact is that there's a lot of people, at least within the Republican Party, who still want to take up the mantle of Trump. A lot of actual, people have still taken the position of supporting him throughout. That he's going to do all the things he promised, whether they be the QAnon types or whether they're just people who genuinely believe in his message and positions outside of QAnon. And one of the things to take note of is that the members of the House who voted for impeachment, like Liz Cheney, are getting absolutely destroyed by other members of the Republican Party. Now, I'm not one to defend Liz Cheney at all because she is the daughter of Dick Cheney, and there's a long history there with, all sorts of problems across the board. But when she does like one semi decent thing and votes for the impeachment, and then the entire Republican Party starts coming at her, there's something to take into account about what's wrong with the Republican Party. And the fact that a woman in Wyoming, Liz Cheney's state, ended up putting out a petition that got approximately 50,000 people in support of that. That's absurd. That is absolutely absurd that that perspective still exists and that somebody taking that position in Congress, especially with what we know, is being just absolutely destroyed like that. So I can't say I am, forgiving anyone in the Republican Party. They're the ones who put Trump in that place in the first place. So I'm not like defending that or saying that we should come to Liz Cheney's defense at all. I'm just saying that it marks a problem within the Republican Party. So, furthermore, the Republicans within the Senate, seeing that kind of perspective, are probably really hesitant to move forward with impeachment. But like other Republicans, there is no clear answer to this key question. What should they do after Trump after he lied to his supporters about the election being stolen, promoted the January 6th rally in D.C., and urged demonstrators to go to the Capitol, which they later rampaged in a deadly riot? Well, there's a good question, said Thune, who faces re-election in South Dakota next year. One way, obviously, would be a court of law. So what we're seeing here is the perspective that, we should just shift the responsibility away from the senators so we don't get attacked by our voter base, so that we don't get attacked by the Trump supporters within our voting base. So not only do you have the people who voted for Trump and are, perfectly fine with putting him into further positions of power and recognize him as a great president, now you're dealing with the side of things where it's like, well, we may not really agree with him and he should certainly be held responsible, but I don't want to be the one to do it because votes are going to turn against me. And, I think people are saying that I think he's been held accountable in the court of public opinion. Corrin says, a member of the Texas GOP, when asked if the Senate should take any actions, arguing it would set a dangerous precedent to convict a former president. Honestly, that's not really a dangerous precedent at all. It's a dangerous precedent not to hold someone who incited that level of insurrection in the Capitol as culpable for what they've done. You have to hold them to accountability and responsibility. And it's funny to me that the GOP, always being the party of, personal responsibility and picking yourself up, is suddenly clamoring to defend their own and defend their own position of power and authority when it's potentially threatened by doing the right thing. And then we see, yet with the 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach Trump for inciting an insurrection facing a sharp backlash from the right, Senate Republicans are well aware that they would face the same if they voted to convict next month. And McConnell, who has privately told associates he thinks Trump committed an impeachable offense, refused to say so publicly when CNN asked him on Tuesday, and he later voted with fellow Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul. Seriously, Kentucky is needs to get its stuff sorted. And honestly, black voters in that area need to be appealed to and need to be spoken to, and their demands need to be met across the board to get those two out. Because I am in the firm belief that the Republican South is actually an occupied territory on some level, with the number of people of color down there who are not able to vote. The Democrats need to start giving democracy back, and they need to start appealing to people in the South who are black and people of color to start coming out and actually listening to their needs. And that means progressive needs. That means moving forward in this country. That means dealing with white supremacy and the issues that are represented in the Republican Party. You want to see people come out in droves against this? Look what happened in Georgia, because that's what the Democrats really need to do if they want to start pushing forward in this country. They need to start taking on the white supremacy problem, which has been in this country forever. So, with that said, though, on this procedural motion that Rand Paul put out, aimed at dismissing the trial on the grounds that it was unconstitutional. Now, this is not unconstitutional at all, and it's absolutely ridiculous that it's being asserted as such. If it is somebody being impeached who is not currently in the presidential office, it is the senators that take over, and this should be part of the Senate's responsibility. So, again, this is just the Republican Party trying to protect its own power base. You have Senator Mike Braun initially signed on to objecting to Arizona's Electoral College result, but then dropped that effort after rioters broke into the Capitol. Yet he's also doing the same Senate GOP dance, criticizing Trump while indicating he won't convict. I think most would have a lot of trouble saying there was no connection between Trump's actions and the deadly violence, Braun said. But the Indiana Republican contended he was worried about convicting someone who's no longer in office. To me, it's a terrible precedent to set. He's not here, he's a private citizen. I think the bigger issue is the fact that people like Mike Braun are worried that this is going to come back at them. Within the move for this impeachment trial, Lindsey Graham has actually been a vocal, supporter of the idea that we shouldn't really have a lot of, to do with the actual impeachment trial. The House impeached President Trump without a witness. If we open the witness door in the Senate, there will be lots of witnesses requested on a variety of topics, and the trial will go on for months, not days. And even though the QAnon shaman insisted that he's willing to testify at Trump's impeachment, Lindsey Graham says, I cannot think of a better way to turn the upcoming impeachment trial into a complete circus than to call the QAnon shaman as a witness on anything. So I believe that this represents a position within the Republican Party that says we don't want this trial to move forward and we don't want to see any evidence and support come against us, because if we have to listen to this, we might get blamed. You have to remember that, again, in addition to all the members of the House and Senate that are, potentially going to lose voter base by supporting the position that Trump did something wrong, you still have a good number of members of the House especially, but also the Senate, who supported the Republican Party's position to silence the votes in Pennsylvania and Arizona. You still had members of the House and Senate who let people in on January 5th to give them a tour of the facilities right before the day of the, insurrection. We still have the accounts of AOC and the squad and even Nancy Pelosi getting threats. I mean, Mike Pence also got threats, to be perfectly real, that they were fearing for their lives, that members of the House and Senate were specifically coming for people like AOC, and were potentially willing to reveal their location and their secret location. And I just believe that the Republicans are fearful across the board that they'll be at risk, or that some information will come out to show that the people doing the trying for Trump are some of the same people responsible for January 6th happening in the first place. And so you really have this situation where a large section of the white supremacist group within the House and the Senate who supports this perspective and opinion and who backed Donald Trump completely across the board and appealed to their voter base, who also have a large portion who are white supremacist, are basically trying to get away with being, kept safe from having to try their own trials, from having to convict themselves, basically, because this evidence is going to come out and hit right back at them. And, they're fearful of taking responsibility for what's happening. They are fearful for having culpability. They are fearful, and they are trying to protect their positions of power first and foremost across the board. And that is the position that the Republicans will continue to take moving forward. With that said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and bell for notifications. You can follow me on Twitter and check out my Discord in the description down below. My name is Anarchist Tara, and I hope you enjoyed watching.